My name is Adrian Cross, and today I'm pulling back the curtain on a story most people would never dare to share. I gave my life to loyalty, patience, and the hope that silence could buy peace. But when I lost my job, the woman I trusted most didn't comfort me. She sneered, called me worthless, and paraded my failure in front of others. What she never realized was that I'd already built something untouchable, something far greater than the marriage she was so quick to abandon. She thought divorcing me was an upgrade. What she didn't see coming was the move I had already made. One that wasn't just worth $18 million, but worth my last word. And the question that haunted me, when the truth finally surfaced, would it be too late? That morning, the silence at the office felt heavier than usual. By noon, my badge was deactivated, and the personnel office avoided eye contact. They muttered about budget cuts, but I knew the truth. It was retaliation. I refused to sign away ownership of the design I'd created. I walked out calm, letting them believe they'd won. 2 hours earlier than usual, I pulled into the driveway of our home in Fairhaven, Montana. The sun was still high, yet everything looked dim. I sat in the car longer than I should have, already knowing no one inside would care why I was early. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and reheated food. Marissa was in the kitchen, earbuds in, laughing at a podcast. She didn't even pause it when she looked up. "You're back early," she said, eyes fixed on her phone. "Something happened," I replied. She raised a brow. "Don't tell me you finally got fired." "They let me go today." Her sharp laugh cut through me. "About time. I told you those little projects of yours were pointless. No one wants a man stuck in 1994. I waited for concern, for anything, but she'd already gone back to scrolling. "So what now?" she asked. "Another one of your dead-end ideas?" I swallowed the truth. The licensing deal, the $18 million that had already landed in my account, the fact that my design was the very thing keeping that company alive. Instead, I muttered, "I just need time to figure things out." She curled a grin. "You've had your whole life for that." That evening, she insisted we join her relatives for dinner. Diane hugged us tightly, and her husband Carl served overcooked roast before tossing the casual jab. "How's work treating you?" Marissa didn't wait a second. "Adrian finally got canned today," she announced loudly. The table went quiet, then Carl chuckled. "Guess they figured out you were just hiding in that workshop." Even Diane laughed. Marissa piled on. "He's always scribbling in those silly notebooks. Maybe one day he'll invent a toaster that doesn't burn bagels." Her father didn't laugh. He just shook his head. "Your brother always had the better head for business." I stayed silent, scraping my fork against the plate, feeling my chest hollow out. On the drive home, she hummed to background tunes like nothing had happened. "You didn't have to say it like that," I whispered. "What?" She shrugged. "It's the truth." That night, sleep wouldn't come. Barefoot, I wandered into the workshop, clicked on the old lamp, and sat at the workshop bench she mocked as my escape pod. From beneath, I dragged out the metal chest I hadn't touched in years. Inside lay my earliest sketches, some forgotten, some that became real blueprints. I picked up one, a schematic for a medical diagnostic tool. Once, Marissa had told me, "You and that chest are like kids building tree houses, except yours cost money." Her footsteps sounded in the hall. She appeared at the doorway, arms folded. "Still clinging to your little dreams?" she said flatly, then turned away. I stayed there long after she left, surrounded by fading paper and the memory of who I once was. For the first time in years, I didn't feel beaten down. Sitting in that workshop, I felt a quiet steadiness stirring inside me. Sleep never came. Long after Marissa had walked away, I stayed with my hands resting on the metal chest, listening to the hum of the lamp and the faint chirp of crickets. It struck me. Our marriage still existed on paper, yet in every corner of the house, it was already gone. I pushed the sketches aside, reaching deeper. My fingers brushed old papers, brittle wires, until I touched smooth plastic. A small silver flash drive scratched along one edge. No label, no mark, but I knew exactly what it held. I slid it into the dusty workstation in the corner. The screen blinked alive. One folder caught my breath. Patent 1971. LAPS prototype final. I clicked. Blueprints, video demos, presentation decks, some stamped with dates as far back as 2009. And then, buried halfway down, the scanned copy of my design grant certificate. I remembered the night it came through. Me alone, printing it, setting it aside to show Marissa the next morning. But I never did. I filed it under one name only. My own. I was proud, even if my brothers scoffed. Robert once told me it was junk. David called it wasted effort. Even back then, Marissa had run her fingers over one of my drawings and said, "Dreams are fine. Just don't let them turn you into a fool." That cut deeper than I let on. So I buried the papers, focused on mortgages, Emily's school fees, Marissa's endless ambitions. I became the quiet provider. But the patent never expired. Not on paper, not in my head. I opened a new file and began cataloging everything I'd saved. Sketches, notes, prototypes, even old emails to a technician I once considered partnering with. My hands moved fast, my mind slower, asking the question I'd avoided for years. Why had I hidden all this? The answer was clear. Every time I tried to shine, they pulled the blinds shut. Above me, floorboards creaked, then silence. I assumed Marissa had gone to bed. She had no idea I was downstairs remembering who I used to be. What I couldn't see was that she sat on the edge of our bed, phone glowing faintly. Her thumb moved quickly across the screen. To D. Message sent. Almost there. He's breaking. Just a little more. No picture, no full name. Just an initial. No reply needed. She knew she had control. Downstairs, I poured water and caught my reflection in the window. Hollow-eyed, yes, but not broken. For once, I saw resolve. By sunrise, she was gone. Coffee cup empty in the sink. Lipstick mark on the rim. A sticky note on the counter. Took the car. Don't wait up. I went back to the workshop, turned on the computer and pulled up an old email chain. One name stood out, an old contact from Riverbend who once offered to license my early work. I never followed through back then. But now I held the leverage. I spent the next morning scanning receipts, salvaged parts, old prototypes, even archived emails. What once looked like clutter now felt like currency. Line by line, I wasn't just cataloging files. I was reconstructing myself, the man who used to believe he could build something from nothing. By noon, the workshop was hot, sunlight cutting across the table. Under a pile of books, I found a photo frame. Me and Marissa, years back, when she still pretended to believe I was building a future instead of wasting time. I remembered the day. It was when I first showed her the prototype. She smiled then, but even in that photo, her eyes betrayed doubt, as if she was already waiting for me to stumble so she could whisper, "Told you so." I turned the frame face down. There was more she didn't know. We once shared a joint email account back when we acted like partners, suppliers, patent office, even small investors. She lost interest quickly, but I remembered the login. That morning, with shaky hands, I tried it. To my surprise, it worked. The inbox was mostly junk. I almost logged out until one unread subject line froze me. Exit strategy. Urgent. It was from Marissa, sent 6 months earlier, addressed to a legal contact named Laura Finn. The words made my stomach twist. My husband is no longer employed, he has no income, and I suspect he won't for some time. I'd like to move forward with a high-yield separation plan. I want full control of our assets, retirement accounts, home equity, and any personal items under my name. He's emotionally dependent, so resistance should be minimal. Let's move fast before he regains footing. Attached was a spreadsheet. I opened it. Every column was a piece of me. Adrian's retirement account, Adrian's classic road bike, all workshop tools and prototypes, joint savings, convert workshop to home gym. 15 years ago, she had asked me to add her name to everything. "It's just smart," she said. "We're married. Shouldn't we share?" I hesitated then, but convinced myself real partners didn't doubt each other. I signed. Now I realized I hadn't built a shared life. I had handed her keys, one signature at a time. It wasn't disappointing reading her plan. It was frosted clarity. This wasn't cruelty born from anger. It was calculation, a descent she'd charted long before the first crack appeared. Around midday, I heard the front door. Marissa's heels clicked across the tile, pausing by the workshop before moving on. Minutes later, a paper slid under the door. I picked it up. A job listing from the corner market, minimum wage stalker position circled in red. Her handwriting scrawled across the margin. No more. Excuses, Adrian. A low, sharp laugh slipped from me. I folded the page and tucked it in my pocket without a word. Later that afternoon, my phone pinged. A name I hadn't seen in years. Tessa Ward. Subject line, still working on laps. I opened it fast. Her message was short. Adrian, came across your name on an old contact sheet. Are you still pursuing laps? If so, let's talk. The message from Tessa Ward played over and over in my mind. I've got people in Silvergate who'd back a clean relaunch. Call me. Her number was still the same. I stared at the screen, frozen. She remembered. She still believed. I stepped out of the workshop, phone in hand. Marissa sat on the couch flipping through real estate listings. She glanced up briefly. Looking for your next pipe dream? She asked, lips tight. I didn't answer. By morning, a new flyer appeared on the kitchen table, this one for Quick Lift, with her handwriting scrawled across the top. You're not above honest work, right? I sipped my coffee, folded the page neatly, and dropped it in the trash. Her insults were piling up, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of watching me snap. That evening, I walked outside, steadying my thoughts. No dog at my side, no leash in hand, but I needed the illusion of calm. By the time I returned, I went straight to the workshop and dialed Tessa's number. She answered on the third ring. Adrian Cross, thought you disappeared. Only for a while, I said. You still believe in LAPS? Her voice carried no hesitation. I never stopped, I told her. Then stop hiding, she said. And for the first time in years, I was ready. Marissa came home around 9, humming a low melody, a plastic bag dangling from her hand. Her hair was styled fresh, not how it looked that morning. Her grin stretched wider than usual as she set her keys in the bowl. You're still up, she said, breezing past. Couldn't sleep. I shuffled papers on the table as if I'd been busy all night. She poured herself a glass of red blend, the kind she once reserved for birthdays, and leaned against the counter like she expected recognition. I ran into Holly after work. We grabbed dinner. I needed it. Her eyes dared me to question, but I didn't. She never asked how I spent my nights, and I no longer volunteered the truth. Because while she scrolled through her phone, I had unlocked something she thought didn't exist anymore. From a locked drawer in my desk, I pulled out my old digital vault. It had been untouched for nearly a decade. I entered the recovery phrase from memory and waited. The balance appeared, just over $52,000, payment from a long-ago consulting project with Canadian developers. Back then, Marissa had dismissed it as nerdy monopoly money. Tonight, that monopoly money became my first clean breath of independence. I shifted it into a private account I'd opened quietly that morning. New email, fresh credentials, no ties to her name. It wasn't about revenge. It was survival. And it felt steady. The next morning was silence over black coffee and dry toast. Marissa didn't look up until she slid a stack of papers across the table with the cool precision of someone finishing a chess match. What's this? I asked. Separation agreement, she replied, sipping without a pause. It keeps everything neat. No mess, no ugly surprises. I thumbed through the pages, the polished language obvious. She hadn't drafted this herself. She had help. The document was precise. Asset divisions, lifestyle differences, even a clause about emotional distance. Marissa finally met my eyes. It's not personal, she said evenly. It's just practical. I nodded once, lifted the pen, and signed without hesitation. For the first time in weeks, I saw her flinch. It was quick, masked by a smug nod, and another sip of coffee, but I caught it. She had expected resistance, a fight it's an outburst. Instead, I gave her a calm agreement, no argument, no performance, just silence, and that unsettled her more than any anger could. Sometimes the best trap, I thought, is the one they enter willingly, smiling. I rinsed my mug, left her at the table, and spent the afternoon in the workshop. Every tool was placed with care, boxes labeled, blueprints sealed in sleeves. The air smelled of metal, dust, and something sharper, momentum. I moved the prototype parts into a cleared corner and installed a new lock on the door, not to keep her out, but to draw a line, a boundary. At dinner, she scrolled her phone, stabbing at her salad, her words disguised as casual remarks. You know, some men your age start getting too comfortable. They forget what ambition looks like. I gave her a thin smile. I guess they do. I walked past her, locked myself in the workshop, and ran a hand across the cleared table. Blueprints, tools, the ghosts of old ideas. They weren't ghosts anymore. She was playing checkers. I was already studying the chessboard 12 moves ahead. By Thursday morning, I was sorting invoices when I heard the clang of the mailbox. I brushed dust from my hands and pulled out the stack. Tucked between coupons and statements was a thick envelope, certified mail, signature required. I didn't need to guess who sent it. I tore it open. The letter was surgical in tone, drafted by her legal counsel, Stephen Rowe. Every line carved with precision, irreconcilable differences, financial instability, emotional neglect. She wanted the house, the car, control of all shared accounts. She even demanded authority over every joint asset in the name of household continuity. I set the papers down, their weight far heavier than the few pages they were. This wasn't simply separation, it was a strategy, her attempt to paint me as the absent, irresponsible husband. But she miscalculated. I wasn't absent, I was waiting. That afternoon I drove across town to see my sister Julia. Her modest home sat behind a row of pecan trees. She opened the door, no smile, just a quiet nod, and stepped aside. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please." We sat in her kitchen, the same one where years ago I fixed her internet and rewired her fans. She hadn't changed, barefoot, practical, blunt. "I'm guessing this isn't a social visit," she said, sliding the mug across. She filed, I admitted. "It's official now." Julia didn't blink. "You're finally seeing what we all saw." "Guess so. She's been laying this out for years, Adrian. You just didn't want to believe it." I stayed quiet. I didn't need her legal advice. I needed her steadiness. Julia set her mug down and looked me in the eye. "Don't let her write your ending." The words landed harder than I expected. I lingered at Julia's house for another half hour, talking about nothing. Her neighbor's noisy dog, the fence she still hadn't repaired, the little details of her life that anchored me. But when I finally left, there was a steadiness inside me I hadn't felt in years. That night, Marissa went to bed early, acting uncharacteristically polite. I stayed at the dining table with my laptop open, combing through old files. I needed to remember who I was before all of this, who I still was, beneath the weight of her silence. A memory surfaced. 6 years ago, after my first small venture collapsed, I stood in our parents' backyard trying to explain. My oldest brother, Robert, cut me short. "Quit dragging our name down," he snapped. "You're the youngest. Stick to little dreams." His words burned, but what hurt more was the silence beside me. Marissa stood there, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. She didn't defend me. She didn't speak at all. Later, when I asked why, she shrugged. "I figured you'd want to handle it yourself." I swallowed that lie, just like so many others. Back in the present, I opened a drawer and pulled out the one thing she had forgotten existed, the original design grant certificate for the Lay PS prototype. I spread the faded pages across the table. My name, Adrian Cross, stood alone. No co-owner, no assignments, no shared rights. Marissa had never been on it. A notification pinged, an email from her, Time stamped 2:45 p.m. Subject line, please sign the property transfer. Message, let's not make this harder than it has to be. This is just about closure. Closure? No. This wasn't her ending, it was my beginning. I stared at the empty reply box and smiled for the first time in weeks. Not out of spite, but because I finally saw the board clearly. She thought I'd roll over. She forgot I built the very thing she was trying to take. Sleep never came. Not because of anger, but because calculation had replaced exhaustion. At 1:40 a.m., when the house was silent, and even the wind outside seemed hesitant, I unlocked the side door and stepped into the workshop. In the far corner, under a tarp, sat the metal chest I hadn't opened in years. I keyed in the 6-digit code, my father's birthday, and pulled it open. Inside was the dark portfolio binder, edges curled, faint coffee stains still on the cover from the night I first submitted the patent. I carried it to the bench, flicked on the lamp and opened it. Page after page, notes, diagrams, timelines, all in my handwriting. And then, buried after the technical drawings, the clause, all intellectual property created solely by the applicant remains under the applicant's full legal ownership regardless of marital status or domestic affiliation. I snapped a photo, saved it twice, one in the cloud, one in an encrypted folder. That clause wasn't just paper, it was my leverage, my shield, my blade. By afternoon, I drove across town to a startup hub that smelled of burnt coffee and restless ambition. Behind a glass wall, Victor Lang, my old partner, was waiting. He had pivoted to venture capital years ago. We didn't shake hands, just a nod. The game had changed. You really kept it all? Victor Lang asked, thumbing through the files on his laptop. Every draft, every patent update, even the rejection letters? I shrugged. A bit of stubbornness, a bit of vision. He leaned back, let out a low whistle. You're either lucidly obsessed or a genius. Maybe both. Victor tapped his screen. I can quietly float this to 3 firms off the record. If one bites, it stays non-binding until you're ready. Discretion isn't optional, I said firmly. His half-smile curled. Then get ready, Adrian. You're about to be the richest nobody in Fairhaven. I'd rather stay underestimated. The next evening, Marissa staged one of her so-called relatives' dinners. To her, they weren't gatherings, they were showcases. The dining table looked like a magazine spread, rosemary candles, perfect napkins, and a charcuterie board she couldn't even pronounce correctly. She played her role well. He's been different lately, she said, feigning concern, hands folded like a saint. Ever since the job loss, he's just not here. Sympathetic nods circled the table. One friend even scribbled down her therapist's number for me. Marissa sighed dramatically. I just want what's best for us both. I've encouraged him to seek help. I stayed quiet. I didn't need to interrupt her, let her spin the story. Every pause, every sideways glance was a brick in the wall she was building around herself. That night, after the guests left and her wine glass sat untouched in the sink, I retreated to the workshop. First, I lined the bottom of my workshop bench drawer with foam. On top, I placed a notarized copy of the patent clause, signed, stamped, dated. Then I fixed a hidden camera above the cabinet, angled perfectly, motion triggered. This wasn't paranoia, this wasn't revenge. It was documentation, survival. She wanted to play to the crowd. I was done playing soft. 3 nights passed. Silence hung heavy, thicker than smoke. Then, just after midnight, my phone pinged. The motion sensor. I tapped in. The live feed lit up. There she was, Marissa, slipping into the workshop like a thief in her own home. She went straight to the drawer, unfolded the paper, and snapped a photo. She didn't notice the small red light blinking just above her. I didn't confront her. I didn't raise my voice. I saved the footage and sent it to Stephen Rowe, my counsel. 2 days later, we sat in the hearing chamber. Cold air conditioning hummed overhead. Marissa wore a pearl satin, gown-toned gray suit, her expression carefully neutral, as though auditioning for pity. Her lawyer spoke first, smug and certain. Your Honor, this document proves Mr. Cross concealed a marital asset. We request an injunction against licensing or sale of the patent until review is complete. Then my counsel rose, calm as stone. Respectfully, Judge, we'd like to enter a short video into evidence. The screen lit up. There was Marissa, caught on camera, unfolding the patent clause in my locked drawer. No sound, just betrayal in high definition. Gasps spread through the chamber. Her lawyer froze. The judge leaned forward. This borders on criminal trespass, she said flatly. You accessed intellectual property without consent and tried to present it as marital. I suggest you tread carefully, Mrs. Cross. Marissa's mask cracked. Not shattered, but just enough to reveal panic beneath the performance. Outside, in the heavy Silvergate heat, she caught up with me. You think this is over? She hissed. You embarrassed me in there, do ya? Oh no, what you've started. I turned slowly. I didn't start this, Marissa. You did. I just stopped covering for you. Her eyes narrowed. I gave you years, Adrian. I supported your worthless projects. No, I cut in. You tolerated me when it was convenient. And when it wasn't, you tried to erase me. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. I walked away. Days later, the whispers started. First in group chats, then in canceled dinner plans, then in friends avoiding her calls. Her carefully crafted narrative unraveled thread by thread, and I didn't need to say a word. She had played the part of the long-suffering wife for years, the selfless partner who endured, who sacrificed. But now, the cracks in her story were widening, and people were finally noticing. And I hadn't even mentioned the $126 million offer yet. That morning, Victor Lang called. Third bidder came through, all cash, the contract's ready. I wasn't in a rush. Let her simmer in the same uncertainty she'd fed me for over a decade. The balance of power had shifted, and I no longer felt guilty for holding it. On Thursday morning, I met Victor at a rundown cafe in Riverbend. No frills, cracked tile floors, burnt coffee, paper cups. He was already in the back booth, sleeves rolled, looking like a man who'd just pulled off a clean heist. Without a word, he slid a folder across the table. I opened it. Legal seals, transfer confirmations, confidentiality agreements, and then the number. $126,000, written out in words like a ritual. It's done, Victor said. You're worth more than she'll ever imagine. I closed the folder slowly. Keep it quiet. She doesn't need to know. Not yet. Victor gave a nod. Understood. And Adrian, don't waste this trying to prove anything. Just live. The court that afternoon was brisk. Same judge, same dull beige walls. Marissa arrived in a pearl satin gown-toned suit, her lawyer grinning like the finish line, and was his. The judge skimmed the file. Mr. Cross, your response? I stood. Calm. I agree to all terms. She can have the house, the car, every shared asset. A murmur rippled through the room. Even her lawyer blinked. Everything? Yes, I said. Marissa tilted her head, curious. Why? Because freedom, I told her, meeting her eyes. Freedom is worth more than anything you ever tried to take. The judge scribbled, stamped, and just like that, it was over. Outside in the Silvergate heat, she walked ahead, heels clicking on the pavement. At the edge of the lot, she finally turned. At last I'm rid of you, she sneered, a sharp smile tugging at her lips. I leaned close, my voice low. Ask your lawyer to check the registry this afternoon. Her steps faltered, just slightly. What? You'll figure it out. And I walked away. By around 6:10 p.m., my phone lit up. First, her attorney. 3 missed calls, then a text. Urgent. We need to talk. Then Marissa's number flashed, again and again, followed by frantic voicemails. I didn't answer. By evening, I opened SocialNet out of curiosity. There it was, her first post in days. Some people are masters of deception. I guess we never really know who they are. The comments poured in. You okay? Call me. You don't deserve this. Her carefully built stage was collapsing. The audience she'd cultivated was confused, maybe even turning against her. And me? I stayed silent. She had traded everything for the illusion of control. Now she was left with silence, the very weapon she once used against me. The morning after, the house felt foreign. Not the quiet, I'd grown used to that, but the stillness. No performance waiting around the corner, just empty air and cardboard boxes. As I walked the hallway, I spotted something wedged behind a cabinet. A chipped clay boat, painted blue, small enough to fit in my palm. My daughter Emily had made it in third grade, calling it Daddy's boat to the moon. I sat on the stairs, brushing the dust from its edges. I remembered her smile that night, cheeks dusted with flour from helping bake. Back then, I promised her someday I'd build something big enough for all of us. Now, holding the little boat, I whispered, I did, just not the way I thought. By noon, my phone buzzed again. Not with Marissa's calls this time. With new beginnings. After the registry shock, Marissa went silent. No more posts, no more late-night digs. Just silence. Messages trickled in from mutual friends. Grant, the BBQ buddy, wrote, I didn't know, sorry for assuming. Clara, who had filled her feed with supportive emojis during Marissa's pity tour, sent, if you ever want coffee, talk or not talk. I didn't reply. Some were offering sympathy, others were fishing for gossip. None of it mattered. 2 days later, word spread. She'd packed up and left for North Dakota, staying with some cousin. No goodbye, no confrontation. Just gone. Like a book that had run out of chapters. The quiet she left behind wasn't bitter. It wasn't peaceful either. Just different. That evening, I met my brother David at Briarfield Park. We sat on a worn bench facing the pond, ducks skimming the water, kids tossing pebbles. The breeze carried the smell of fresh-cut grass and someone grilling nearby. David sipped his coffee and finally asked, would you do it the same way if you could go back? I thought for a long moment. Yes, but sooner. He nodded. You waited too long. I wanted to believe the best in her, I said. No, he said gently. You didn't want to disappoint Emily. That hit harder than I expected. We let the silence stretch after that, not uncomfortable, just steady. That night, I went to the workshop. Not as a battlefield, but as my own space again. The shelves were still lined with tools. The hidden drawer still clicked shut. Inside, I kept the patent clause, not as a weapon anymore, but as a reminder. And next to it, in a small metal chest, I placed the chipped clay starlight boat. Its paint was flaking, the hull bent, but it was hers. It was mine. No court could ever take that. I'm in therapy now. Real therapy. Not just books in between disasters. I've learned to listen better, to talk to my daughter without making her pick sides. Emily texts me more often now. Short, simple things, but more. One message still sits unread, not because I'm avoiding it, but because it says enough. Dad, thank you for staying with you. And maybe that's the hardest part. Staying yourself when the world keeps pulling in directions you never agreed to. I won't forget what Marissa did. The lies, the manipulation, the hollow betrayal. But forgetting isn't healing. Some wounds don't heal. They just stop bleeding. She thought money was the victory. She never understood. Peace was the prize.